Before Sonic.exe, there was Tails Doll. But seriously, how could this adorable, lovable, stuffed plush of joy possibly... I see. The Curse of Tails Doll is part of internet urban legend history. A story about an obscure cursed Sonic character whose reach extends the confines of the game, and will possibly start knocking at your bedroom door at 2 AM if you're not careful. It was a popular horror story among Sonic fans before the existence of the word creepypasta, and it's all based around a one-off creation built by Eggman for a spin-off racing game. How the hell did this silly thing become one of the most viral video game horror stories out there? Well, to close out Mint-October for this year, let's do a deep dive into the origins of Tails Doll. We first have to go back to the official debut of Tails Doll. This picture is the unadulterated version of the doll before the internet mutated him into something completely different. First debuted in a spin-off Sonic racing game entitled Sonic R, released for the Sega Saturn back in 1997. These days, this game is probably known for its ridiculously amazing soundtrack, but in '97, this game was Sega's attempt at utilizing the Sega Saturn's hardware for a Sonic game in a 3D environment. The plot was pretty simple, with Sonic and Tails finally preparing to take a vacation after all the hard-ass work they'd put into stopping Eggman like 6 or 7 times up to this point. I guess even heroes need a mental health break. Tails would find an advertisement for the World Grand Prix, something that doesn't necessarily interest Sonic until he finds out Dr. Eggman was joining. Eggman, on the other hand, is joining the races as a front while tricking Sonic and Tails to collect the Chaos Emeralds for him. Then he'd attempt to steal the emeralds from them to enslave the world. Amy and Knuckles seem to overhear this, which is why villains should stop monologuing to themselves, and the two of them join the races as well. So with the stage set, all of these characters are not only racing in the Grand Prix, but also collecting Chaos Emeralds to save the world once again. But where does Tails Doll come in? Well, Eggman needed some contestants on his side to join races, so why not build some robots to help with the cause? Naturally, Metal Sonic joins the fray, but Eggman builds 2 other creations to counter Sonic's friends, Metal Knuckles and Tails Doll. I'm gonna take a guess and say Tails Doll here was a last-minute choice on his part. It's essentially a plushie version of Tails with some type of antenna ruby embedded into the head area that serves as some type of receiver. Anyway, if you want to know a little more about the other invention, Metal Knuckles, I also discuss him within my video on Metal Sonic. But to better understand the conception of Tails Doll, it's important to take a look at the time frame of when this was developed. The transition of video games to the 3D plane was practically an obsession in the late 90s, with Sega, Nintendo, and Sony, who was new to the market, all racing their way to get as many games out as they could with this new 3D space. Sonic R was a collaboration between Sonic Team and Traveler's Tales, who were pretty prominent in the video game market in the 90s, responsible for games like Sonic 3D Blast, Toy Story, and Mickey Mania. The Traveler's Tales team had already been working on a 3D engine prior to the development of Sonic R, and decided to repurpose a Formula 1 game they originally had planned into the Sonic racing game that would eventually release to the market. The Tails Doll design, interestingly enough, wasn't submitted by the design team for Sonic R. The credit for this would go to Yoshitaka Miura, who was a background artist at Sonic Team who joined the same year. In an interview with Kazuyuki Hoshino during Summer of Sonic 2013, he'd revealed that Tails Doll was inspired by the shootable stuffed Tails Doll in the Eggman base level in Sonic Adventure, which was in development at that time. And while they don't look identical, it's interesting to find out that a game that came out later would inspire a whole character in an earlier title. Sonic R was the first and last time we'd see Tails Doll in a Sonic game, and aside from some fan art on the internet, was more or less a forgotten one-off character for a while. Until one day. This is the earliest picture I can find floating on the internet that links Tails Doll to being something a little more sinister in nature. Now, I know a lot of things on the internet have probably been lost to time, but this particular image was posted on Flickr within an album called Tails Doll Pictures on August 26, 2005. Was this just submitted by some edgy teenager at the time that wanted to fuse blood and gore with the Sonic series? Or did the image go along with a forgotten urban legend on some forum that has been long dead and buried in the depths of the old internet? So I decided to dig deeper. Now, there's plenty of creepypasta stories you can find surrounding Tails Doll now, but I wanted to find the source of all this. It was fascinating to me that the wikis just chalked this whole thing up as having unknown origins, and with a filtered Google search, I don't exactly see mentions of it start to pop up online until around 2007. I grew up during this era, and I'm pretty sure I saw a lot more people talking about Tails doll prior to that year, so I went further down the rabbit hole. First, I tracked down a fanfiction story from 2007 with comments debating whether or not the curse is actually real. I figure since the comments and story were already referencing the curse, this wasn't far back enough. So, with a little more digging, the best initial outline of the Tails doll curse itself that I managed to find was in an old GameFAQs thread for Sonic R entitled "The Tails Doll: A Guide to the Curse." Posted in January 2008 by Shadow6000, the post details what the curse is, and what happens if you're cursed by Tails doll. Finally, a little bit of clarity on the curse. So let's break this down. The Tails doll curse is a curse contained in the game Sonic R. It can be unlocked several ways. The most common way to activate the curse is to complete the game 100%, including characters and courses. In the GameCube version of the game, on the Sonic Gems collection, Miyamoto supposedly left a seal to block such a curse. However, to break this seal, one must tag Super Sonic as Tails doll. The third and final method of unleashing the doll upon yourself is to get in front of a mirror in a completely dark bathroom and sing the lyrics of Living in the City backwards, resulting in a fake red glowing in the mirror. And what happens if you're cursed by Tails doll? The post goes on to say after activating the curse, the sign of your impending doom is a day of bad luck. Usually it starts out small, such as waking up 5 minutes late, but then escalates and things important to your life start to disappear. These preliminary stages are provided by the doll to ensure that you believe in him. And after a week or so of horrendous luck, the doll will start to send you messages, usually in the form of sticky notes, like your passive-aggressive roommate. After some of this continues, the doll will confront you personally and give you two choices: be his eternal slave, or he will devour your soul. So just in case any of you try this at home, here's how you ward off the curse. All is not completely lost if you discover that you're indeed cursed by the evil doll. For instance, the doll will stray away from Metal Sonic, so if you find that you're cursed, surround yourself with little tokens in Metal Sonic's resemblance. Also, the game Shadow the Hedgehog has some strange properties against the curse as well. But mark my words, as soon as you let your guard down, the Tails doll will attack. Constant vigilance is required. As crazy as all this sounds, this was indeed very infectious on the internet back in the day, with people constantly asking if the curse was actually real. But now we know exactly what the Tails doll curse is, but we still don't know who came up with this story and why. But I found some hope. Shadow6000 posts a link below this post to an old forum for an old webcomic called Quacker and Bowen. Apparently, the main character of this comic, Quacker, is an avid Sonic fan, and Tails doll was possibly referenced quite a bit during the comic's run. It's since been defunct, but the fans of this comic seem to have quite the fascination with Tails doll himself. So, I attempted to access the URL, but of course, it's no longer in service. With a little more digging, I found that the forums were actually hosted elsewhere, and to my shock, there was an entire board just for Tails doll discussion. Some of these posts go back to as early as 2005, with many of the users sharing their story of the Tails doll curse, and you can see people actually wondering if the effects are truly real. Even back in 2009, people were curious as to the origin of the story. What is the origin of this curse? Was there a creepy glitch in the game? Is it just because the doll looks creepy, even though I think it's adorable looking? Or just for nuts and giggles? Some dude was probably just bored one day and made it up. I would love to know where all this started, and it would be a great help for people to post everything they know about its origin here. There are a lot of theories about the doll's origin, but nothing conclusive as to how, or why for that matter, it came to be. There are also a couple of theories on the origin of the myth. The most likely is that it was a joke started on a message board. You know the internet. I'm pretty sure Quacker mentioned it on a thread here somewhere, the specifics. So even then, no one truly knew who came up with it first. I ran into a dead end, and I was thinking of stopping my research there. Because if these people didn't know, I'm sure the answer I was looking for was impossible to find on the internet. Interestingly enough, there was a post on this forum as recent as 2021 with the title, "Investigating the TD Story." Apparently, I'm not the only one trying to get to the bottom of this. The user I am Pimp posts as follows. I apologize for writing to a section that has not been updated for a long time. Hello, I'm investigating various creepypastas, and today I would like to know if the Tails doll story is real and where it came from. Her first mention. So I'm wondering, did the TV stories first appear at quackerandbone.com? If not, which site did the stories about her first appear on? Some time passes, and I Am Pimp actually gets a response. If you can dig around this old relic of a forum page, I'm sure you can find the origins. Used to browse the original website back like 11 years ago. All I know is it started off as a joke on a thread on some other website. Good luck, mate. So that's 2 posts that references it as a joke on a random forum somewhere. But what about this link provided by the user I'm Pimp? Of course, it's also a dead link, but I decided to see if I could get a screenshot from the Internet Archive. And voila, success. This screenshot dates back to December 2005, a submitted FAQ for Sonic Gems collection for the GameCube, a set of games which also included Sonic R in the mix. This FAQ explicitly references the Tails doll curse, and even goes as far as mentioning the whole Miyamoto placing a seal on the game to prevent players from being cursed. But it still doesn't feel like the exact origin, and I couldn't find anything older than this. But I wasn't gonna give up. One of these users on the Quacker and Bone forum had to have known something. After hundreds of searches and pages of old forum talk, I struck gold. The admin for the Quacker and Bone forum was a user named QuackerDuck, most likely the creator of the webcomic and apparent Sonic fan. An absolute hero named Master Silver mentioned that he has no idea where the whole Tails doll thing originated, and Quacker responds. Actually, it originated on the Mobius forums at the Sonic HQ boards. I should know. I was there. It began with a simple discussion of how creepy the Tails doll looked. Then I started being the over-the-top guy I usually am, and began mentioning urban legends with Tails doll as the killer. They're on this site now, the first under my stories. I think Craig Bayfield and Robobotnik were in on it too. Eventually, some mods/sticks in the mud said that we were distracting the group from Sonic talk with our campfire stories. So I started a Sonic R curse page on the Shadow Shrine, and the rest is history. I think we actually may have found the humble beginnings of the Tails doll curse. So I was pretty sure the Shadow Shrine he was mentioning was a section that was on his old Quacker and Bone site. So I decided to jump into the web archive once more and see how far back that page actually went. Quackerandbone.com actually dates back to the year 2002. As I sifted through the site, the earliest mention that I could find about the Sonic R curse or Tails doll dates back to at least April 2005. And if you head into that Sonic R curse page, you actually see probably what would be one of the earliest, if not the first, Tails doll story in existence. I heard that 7 days after you play Sonic R, your Saturn boots up, the TV flickers to life, and the Tails doll lurches to the screen. Then it hovers over the foot of your bed, staring at you with its dead eyes. Staring, 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 until you go stark raving mad. The only way to survive the curse is to get a friend to buy Sonic R and recommend it to someone else. Sadly, this curse is damn near impossible. If we're to believe Quacker's recollection, these are the campfire stories and urban legends built around Tails doll that was gathered first at that Sonic HQ board way back when. Of course, I couldn't leave it at that, and I had to hunt down this Mobius forum on Sonic HQ. As some of you may know, Sonic HQ is one of the oldest Sonic fan sites in existence, and they've hopped around many different web services over the years. The post we're looking for in particular was on their EasyBoard version of the site, which has long since shut down. But technically, since Sonic HQ is still around, I wanted to see if they archived it anywhere. Surprisingly, they did. So did I manage to find the original Tails doll thread that started it all? Well, maybe. After sifting through these forums, the very earliest mention of a sinister Tails doll I could find was in a thread called "It Must Have Been a Long Time," posted on July 14th, 2004. User Dreamer of Nights is celebrating their year anniversary on the forum. While the post is mostly normal, the last sentence reads as follows: "Now I demand presents. Otherwise, I'll sick this little Tails doll to all of you." Unfortunately, all the images that were contained on the thread are gone. But what's even stranger is that every post below this one is missing or has been deleted. Yeah, this could definitely match up with the post Quacker described, where everyone started discussing how sinister Tails' doll looks, only to have the whole thread wiped by an aggressive moderator. It's not definitive, but it's the best theory I have when it comes to the original thread. I also did manage to track down the user Craig Bayfield that Quacker mentioned in his post, who changed their username to Camden Bayfield at some point. Shortly after the wiped, it must have been a long time thread, another post would reference Tails' doll, posted by Camden on May 25th, 2005. In response to a user discussing meeting the leader of Sonic Team at the time, Yuji Naka, Camden responds, "I'm sure after translating your fanboy gibberings and requests/demands, he would roll up his sleeves, remove his hat, and then pull a Sonic doll out of it. Or maybe he'll accidentally pull a Tails doll out of his hat, and it will suck your soul and kill everyone at E3. So it looks like it was already an inside joke at this time. In this thread, official Japanese Sonic X discussion, a user named Mist Echidna directs a question at Camden, saying, "This is entirely off topic, but Craig, is your banner pick your famous Tails doll plush that we were all talking about in the Tails doll theory thread?" "Yep, it's finally ready and made. I'll have him in hand within a few weeks. Evil has been stitched." So after discovering this, I was extremely confident that this Tails doll theory thread referenced right here is the origins of the Tails doll story. This would be the oldest reference to a killer Tails doll that I can find on the internet, posted by the exact user specified by Quacker on this forum. I strongly believe these moments on this exact forum to be the origins of the Tails doll story. Sadly, I also believe that the original posts have been wiped from the internet forever by a power-hungry mod that wanted the users to stay on topic. But maybe you all can find something more and leave a comment below about it. Maybe someone out there truly knows the definitive moment where the curse of Tails doll was born. But for me, it feels like the closer to the truth you get, the more you realize it probably was never meant to be seen.